have you had with ELL students? Like how many you've, not an exact number, but just like have you had a lot of them or not a lot? What languages?
I have not had a lot. Um, Usually like one every couple of years, and usually the language is Spanish.
Spanish. And
I've
you
never had a student with another language.
what school did you teach at?
That was at Interlochen Elementary School.
Okay. And what years were those?
That I taught my ELA student.
I mean, like what? How long were you, like around what time period were you teaching there?
That was kindergarten.
Yeah. So okay, so like one every couple of years. So like did you have any difficulties with it, or like what difficulties did you have compared to English speaking students?
Well, the main difficulty is that he didn't understand English,
Mhm.
and so communicating was super super hard.
Yeah.
I mean, you're literally dropping a kid in a space with 20 other people that doesn't speak the language.
Right.
It's challenging.
So what kind of supports did they have for your ELL students? Like what programs or whatever did they have to do? How did you help? Like what programs did your school have to help them out?
So we had a pull-out program. So we went with an English as a second language teacher who spoke fluent Spanish.
Mhm.
He went with her every day for maybe 45 minutes to an hour.
Mhm.
And they would work on reading and math skills.
Okay.
So the majority of what he did in my class was like social skills and art and following instructions and
Mhm.
socialization and things like that.
Yeah.
I was, he was learning the letters and sounds, but he wasn't reading at the end of the year.
Yeah. Did you have any like textbooks or anything, any kind of materials that were in his language, or was that only in his like his
No,
other
I
teacher's
didn't
class?
have any. I didn't have any.
All right. So my professor was telling us about like Title III and um, like what things you can get for your students, like
Mm-hmm.
tutors. Did you ever deal with any of that kind of stuff?
Did he have tutors outside of school?
No, I think so. The Title III stuff is like funds that you're allowed to tap into for your English learning students. That can, so it goes towards materials for like books in their first language, or funds for like a teacher's aide or a para who's bilingual and can work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
When I had him, that was 15 years ago.
Right.
And I did not have, if there was funding for support, I didn't know about it.
Mhm. Yeah, I wondered what was there when you were teaching.
Yeah. The support he had was the ESOL teacher, the English second language.
Mhm.
And that was, other than that, we just had to kind of wing it.
Yeah.
He picked up on English really fast, but there was a lot of, pointing and gesturing and hand holding, and here we're going here. But he was also in kindergarten,
Sure.
He was little.
Yeah.
He wasn't reading in his native language yet, so we weren't dealing with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, when some of the stuff I was like learning in my assignments in this class, we were talking about like if you're already literate in your first language, it's easier to become literate in your second language. So I feel like that would make it harder when you're dealing with a kindergartner. But on the other hand, like you're teaching all the students to read. So I feel like in that way he'd be doing kind of the same thing as the other students since everybody's learning to read together and it's not just him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the main thing was just keeping him focused and on target, on task,
Mm-hmm.
which for kindergarten is really busy and hands-on, and
Mm-hmm.
so if it was a project that involved like art, he could do that because he could either copy my example or follow what the peers around him were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then for stories and things like that, we just did a lot of reading with picture books. So, one of my focuses was just building vocabulary with him.
Yeah. So do you think how do you think him not speaking English affected his relationships with the other students? Was it hard for him to make friends or anything like that?
No, he had a super outgoing personality.
Did he didn't speak any English or a little bit or?
When he got there, he didn't speak any, but he learned it really fast.
Mm-hmm.
He was learning super fast, and he was really playful and energetic and outgoing. So he didn't have an introverted personality.
Yeah.
So I think that his personality type helped him
Mm-hmm.
to function in the classroom.
Dang, I lost my
Because
question.
it's not like high school where he's got to, just trying to control the chaos.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and with kindergartners,
Yeah.
they just kind of play,
Yeah. Which, playing anyway. But,
Sure.
so.
So one of my other questions was if you could have changed anything in terms of what kind of support you got or what kind of programs your school used, what would you change if you could change any of that?
Oh, I think it would have been super, super helpful if there had been a pair
Mm-hmm.
who could translate and work with him constantly one-on-one with his English.
Yeah.
Even just the simple stuff like get in line or
Mm-hmm.
tie your shoe or it's time for lunch or let's go outside. Just helping. And so he figured that stuff out. But when a parent is sitting there helping him with basic sight words in English, and being able to say this is the same word,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the word in Spanish, so he'd have some connection.
Yeah. Yeah. So
He was just able to communicate with the ESOL teacher.
yeah, so you said that your ESOL teacher was bilingual, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was.
So yeah, and he was able to communicate with her, so it'd have been easier to have somebody bilingual there all the time.
Yeah.
And
but I don't, it would have been easier, but I don't know if he would have learned as much English
Mm-hmm.
either. It's how do you know that? How do you know what would have?
Right. So and you said you only had you only had one, one English learning student every couple years, right? Did you ever have more than one at a time?
No, I don't know if I'm trying to think of another student that didn't have any English. No, I think he was probably my only one.
Yeah, dang. Yeah, but when I substitute teach, I have, I've been in. It depends on the school, cause schools can have such different kind of demographics in their population. But I went and subbed at one school, and it must have been majority Hispanic kids. So I had probably 5 or so ELL students in the class. Maybe 3 of them who didn't speak any English, but I had, probably 8. I had probably 5 students who were bilingual, which really made it easy because I did have kids who were able to translate, and I think they were like used to that because they, obviously had this routine of working in pairs with, bilingual kids with kids who didn't speak any English yet. And it it was a lot easier than I had thought it would be to be working with that many kids who didn't speak English at all, just because I had the kids who were bilingual there too.
Like, but then like the same situation with Jesus, like, would he have been able to, would he have picked up on English as much as he did?
Yeah.
Because it was a survival technique.
Yeah.
Instead of someone translating everything. But, he survived.
Yeah.
He went to first grade. We didn't hold him back.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we did his, assessments and things like that, it was obvious that he was capable of learning at the same rate as peers.
Yeah.
He just wasn't going to be the same spot yet.
Right. But he was learning, like, as fast?
Hmm?
Like, you mean he was learning, like, kind of at the same rate as his peers?
Yeah, he was learning. He obviously didn't have any problem learning. He was just starting from literally ground zero
Mm-hmm.
in a new language. So we decided not to hold him back because we felt like that could be socially detrimental.
Yeah.
To be held back just because of language when there was obviously no other barrier to his learning.
Mm-hmm.
Because he could do math. He was starting to sound out words. He was learning sight words. I mean, he was picking up stuff really fast.
How well did he speak by the end of the year?
I wouldn't say he was fluent. He was pretty choppy, but we could certainly communicate a whole lot easier by the end of the year.
Yeah. So let me think of like a wrap-up question. Do you just, from what you learned working with any English speaking, like how would you sum up what you learned, and is there any advice you would give?
I think my advice would be to just don't stress about it. Just remember this. It's just a little person.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little person. They don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, having a lot of patience and kindness and,
mm-hmm.
And maybe you're like keeping really focused on his learning, a student who's learning the language, but they have different learning goals.
Yeah.
They're not, but they would be like expecting you to read in French within your first 6 months of hearing the language. I mean, like, to keep like some realistic expectations.
Yeah.
And realistic, not just expectations, but assessments.
Mm-hmm.
What you're judging and what you're evaluating. Because I think grade level expectations kind of have to go out the window.
Yeah.
When you're dealing, like, this is a child dealing with his own unique needs and challenges that other students in the classroom don't have.
All right. Well, I think
But they're just still a little person.
Yeah, especially when you're working with like kindergartners.
Yeah.
That is cute.
And so, I don't know. I think for grades above kindergarten, I would really push to have some individual education plans in place so that the kid is not giving credit for the growth that they're making.
Yeah.
If they're making a year and a half, 2 years worth of growth in 6 months, they might not be able to, they might not have caught up with their peers, but they've made a huge amount of growth.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be counted against them as far as grade placement for the next year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get you.
Don't be holding kids back. They can't master a language in 6 months.
That probably happened to Dad a bit. I know he got held back.
Yeah. It
But
just
he
doesn't
missed a
make any
couple
sense
grades.
to me. Because, there's so much differentiation in instruction right now that I'm hoping that it won't be like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no way I was going to hold this kid back.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's like limited amount of help it can do because they're just kind of gonna they're gonna end up repeating repeating material no matter
Yeah, that's
what.
not gonna. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, no. Anyway, that's my advice.
All right.
They're little people.
All right. Well, I think I got everything I need for my interview. I'll
Okay.
stop recording now. I'm so